was pretty gushy. Thank you. And I would like to thank you for being asked to do this. This is just such a neat place. I know they talk about the echoes from the canyon, and they definitely are here. Definitely are here. This is just such a pretty place, and so many neat things have happened down here. But I want to thank you for asking me to share with you. And she said she thought there was somebody here that hadn't heard me. I haven't been bouncing around so much lately, but I tell this same story, and it's like a good offense is a good defense. And so if you've heard this before, well, I have to tell it because I have to tell it for me, about these three women that were in this retirement residence. I hesitate to say old folks home, but they were sitting in their rocking chairs and reminiscing, and one of them said to the other, we have been so blessed, said so many good things have happened to us in our life, and they all nodded, and she said, I'm sure there's some things that each one of us regrets. And she said, you know, I never finished college, and I wish I'd gone to school. And so she looked at the other one, and she said, well, I never did get to travel. I would like to have gone to Switzerland. So when they looked at the third one, she said, well, never had a baby, and I wish I could have had children. And she said, well, you know, it's not too late in this day of all this technology and all these things. It's just, why don't you go to your doctor and check it out? And so sure enough, she found herself with child and had a little baby girl. And so her two friends went to see her. They rang the doorbell of her apartment, and she came, and she said, come in. They said, we came to see the baby. And she said, well, come in, and I'm fixing us some hot tea. So they came in, sat down, and so a little while later, they were getting a little anxious, and they said, well, we really came to see the baby. And she said, well, I'm getting cookies out of the oven to go up the tea. And so they sat there a few minutes longer, and just were insistent. Said, we really want to see the baby. And she said, I know, but she's taking a nap, and I put her down, and I forgot where I put her. We'll have to wait till she wakes up. So I tell this story because I have a tendency to forget where I put the baby. So if I go wandering off into the peach orchard, just do the best you can. Because I'm 76, and that's a whole lot to squinch down, and I never go out. Maybe talking in front of you is just a true test of faith for me, because when on the morning that I'm going to talk, it always feels like above my eyebrows has just been stuffed with pink feathers. There's just nothing really. But I've been prayed over, and so it's like, you know, whatever. It's God's fault what turned it over. Oh, but I am an Al-Anon, and I'm grateful to be an Al-Anon, because I don't take it just as really I don't. Just being married to an alcoholic doesn't make me be an Al-Anon. And it's always just there's a page in there one day at a time that talks about taking offense. And that says what we do, we take offense. And I do it deliberately a lot of times. I take offense, and I usually let you know. But one of the things about taking offense is people that say, well, my mom's an alcoholic, or my mom's an Al-Anon. Well, she's never been to a meeting. She doesn't have a sponsor. She doesn't know the steps from a hole in the ground. And I think, how can she be an Al-Anon? Those are requisites, you know. Just being married to an alcoholic doesn't necessarily. It's like the thing, you know, sitting in a garage doesn't make you a car. And so there are some things to do to be an Al-Anon. And we have a list of them. You know, we're good at lists. And the things. Let's see. How did I start? A long time ago. I was born. We went into Hinton yesterday to have breakfast. Have this huge breakfast, and then we had to find a garage sale. And Hinton's a little tiny town. It reminded me a lot of where I grew up, in a little West Texas town that had one paved street. And I remember this being safe and no locked doors. And I can't remember bad things happening. I was thinking later about alcoholics, which was a word wasn't even in my vocabulary. They were the town drunks, and there were three of them. And they were nice men. One of them took the trash or the junk out to the junkyard. And after my mother had sort of sniffed, well, she'd let my brother and me ride with him on the wagon sometime. And drugs, I didn't know anything about drugs. The only thing I heard was that they were in New York on the street and they were dope fiends. And I never did, it was only later that I found out about fiends, how you spelled it. But anyway, it seems like right now a very innocent time to grow up. I was the firstborn, and later there would be three brothers. One of them was 2 years younger, and then when I was 17 and 18, there were two little baby brothers that came along. And I married when I was 19, so my little brothers, and then I had children like Snap, Crackle, and Pop. It was just I went to college, and I was going to major in pre-med because I'd been in the hospital so much with things, so I thought I probably needed to do something worthwhile. And so, but I'll tell you, it was easier for me to have babies than it was to pass chemistry. And so I married at 19, and Jack came back from, people would say, how'd you meet Jack? Well, I never did meet Jack. We just knew each other. When you live in a little bitty town, you just know each other. How do you know when you ever... Our parents belonged to the same bridge club for 25 years. And he and my cousin went right after Pearl Harbor, enlisted, and he was first lieutenant, and he was 6'4", little tiny waist, and when they wore those Eisenhower jackets, and I thought he was really special looking, and I was 14, and he didn't even see me. But when he came back, I was 19, and a few things had shifted, and I'm persistent. So we were married just about 3 months later, and had our first little boy a little too soon, and I am persistent. Like I said, it was easier to have babies than it was to do a lot of other things. So we married, and he told me when we got married that he liked to drink. And so anyway, my mother told me, she said, now, when your husband asks you to go with him, you go. Dishes will wait, and beds will wait, but a husband may not. And I took her literally. I could beat him to the door, to the car, every time he mentioned to go. And later, when we came into the program, people would talk about, that Jack Clayton must really be henpecked, or he's got a DWI, because she's with him all the time. Well, I never did want him to find out he could go without me, so it just, if you're there all the time, they don't know the other. So, but I was determined, if he's going to have a drinking partner, and that partner is going to be a female, well, let me tell you, it was going to be me. I was going to protect my property. So, we never did. There wasn't drinking in my house. Mother kept a bottle of wine to soak the fruitcake in. Put the cocktail or whatever, soak it. That's all the liquor there was. My dad would drink maybe once or twice a year, and people would ask me if my dad was an alcoholic. And I don't know. I do know that every time he drank, something really bad would happen. And so it was like if he was going to have liquor on his breath or even drink beer, my mother was going to be very unhappy when he got home, so he might as well, the 1 or 2 times a year, just get really, might as well pay for it. And so one time there was, he and 3 other men went to a little neighboring town, and the I don't know what it was, deputy or whatever, stopped them, and somehow one of the guy got trigger happy, and one of the men with my dad got killed. It was in the front page of the Lubbock paper and everything. And I didn't go through a lot of these, but I can think about kids whose parents are alcoholics, and the pain and the shame that they do go through, because I thought my life had ended with that. So I would think about, I'm not an analyzer. I got lots of things more important to do than the navel gaze, so I'm not one to really analyze. So, but it was only later when one of our sons started drinking that He didn't drink like Jack did. He didn't drink like I did. And then I could remember that he sort of drank like my daddy did. He drank, my dad would fight, and when he'd get on one of these, and my son, he was coming home. I woke up one morning, I felt his eyes on me, and I woke up, and here's my son sitting there, and he says, do you think you could take me to the doctor? He says, I think I broke my hand. And he's broken his hands many times. I always think protecting some girl's honor that hadn't had honor in a long time. But he finally got mature enough or grew up or did something enough that he hadn't fought in a long time. So we do grow up. And I think sometimes, I had my 40th Al-Anon birthday. I've been coming to Al-Anon since 1962. And I think sometimes, don't overanalyze this one either, but am I weller than some by continuing to come, or am I sicker than some by having the need to? But whatever it is, I do still feel the need. There's still something deep within me that needs you, needs what I'm getting this weekend, that fills up places that I don't even know are empty until I get with you. And I see people that I really and truly love, that I've known on this front row, that I've known since the 60s. And when we first came in the program, and then there's some of you that I'm just meeting, the young ones, and I'm cultivating you because you can still drive at night. And I need you. After we got married and had our 2 children right off the bat, and like I said, Jack had told me that he liked to drink, and I was going to be that drinking buddy with him. So he was making $300 a month, and we went out to the bootlegger. We had a special bootlegger about 6 miles out of town, and paid $9 a fifth for whiskey. Now, proportionately, I don't know what that would be today, but we never did seem to lack the money for whiskey. And I had seen the pictures of Canadian Club in the, the sophisticated things with the girls. She always had on this one sleeve dress and holding a long-stemmed glass. And it just looked really pretty cool. Well, we went out to the country and would order. The bootlegger would come out to the car and ask what kind of whiskey he wanted, and she'd nod, and then she'd go out into the field and count off so many rows, lived out on the farm, over, and dig up whatever it was they ordered. She planted her whiskey out there and it was hot. It was hot from the heat, and then just hot. And so we'd take a Coke for me, and Jack would teach me how to take a swig of Coke, and then a swig of liquor, and then another swig of Coke. And this never did just fit that picture of... But anyway, it took some practicing. My mother never did understand why we got such a nice fry pan from this woman. She said, "Why in the world is she sending you a wedding present?" And I thought, well, Jack's helped build one wing of that house out in the country. But the guys were coming back from World War II, and for the most part, marrying girls. And Petersburg was little. It was about 500 people. Well, there's just not a whole lot of entertainment. They had a movie on the weekends, but we had an American Legion Hall. They'd bought an old Methodist church that had moved on. It was just like a basement. They never got the top part. But every Saturday night, the American Legion would have a dance. So we'd go to dance, and I didn't know this, but it seemed to me that there was sort of an unwritten rule. You don't go home till all the whiskey's gone. At least we never did. But everybody takes their own bottle, and I found out later a lot of people did go home early, but not us. We're still there. But Jack was tall, and he'd kind of pass out of the picture, about 11. And they had a big black leather couch, and he would lie in state after that. It's like, and I wasn't ready to go home but it'd take half the American Legion to help me take him home and get him out of the car and into the house. So then when he would ask me about the party, I said, "Do you mean to tell me that you don't remember what happened?" And because I said, "Why don't you just take a few drinks and then take a sleeping pill?" It just seemed to me like it'd be a lot cheaper, just not going to remember anyway. So, but he never did buy that. He'd say, "Do you mean to tell me that you remember everything you did?" And I said, "Well, I certainly do." Got really deep. And he said, "Well, Pat, if I were you, I wouldn't admit it." And he was quiet. He could sit up in a kitchen chair for just hours and passed out and not fall out. And I was one of the ones that I liked to stay up late, and so we'd go wake up all the ones that hadn't gone to American Legion to the dance. We'd go wake them up, wake their kids up and everything, find out why they weren't there. So I was one that I danced on the tabletops, and so people would ask me later, said, "Do you think you're an alcoholic?" And we always had these comparisons, and I did drink a lot, and I like drinking. I always, it makes you prettier. And to me, and I always felt it did to other people, but and so all of our drinking, it wasn't all gloom and doom. We had grandparents that took care of the children while we were doing whatever it was we were doing at the American Legion Hall. Jack was called back into Korea, and so our marriage had gotten just really, we'd been married 5 years and had these 2 children, and the bloom was off the rose. I'm telling you, it was, he thought I spent too much money, and I didn't think he helped me nearly enough, and I think it was sort of a relief to have a legalized battle in Korea. So he left and was gone for 15 months, and in this period, I really made some decisions and some new commitments. I really wanted to be committed to my marriage. One thing is that I hated standing in line to get a license plate or whatever, and then get up there and find out you had to have the car title. And all those things I had to learn, all those things I had to learn to grow up, and because I was very immature. So when Jack came home, I really made a decision to ask God to make. Well, I wasn't talking to God those days, so that's really an untruth. I was just about my prayers were usually beforehand, and I was usually pray, "Lord, please don't let me be pregnant and make it retroactive, please." So mostly they were just sort of, foxhole prayers. But I did make a commitment to the marriage. One of the neatest things Jack ever said to me was, he wasn't a gift giver. This wasn't his bent. But when he first got back, he said, "Pat, I've always loved you, but I like you now." And that means a lot to me. Being in like is important, because I think you can love people and just not like them at all. And got an offer to move to Houston. Well, we did. And he traveled a lot. So this was at a period of time when I got to wear those one-shouldered dresses, and we went to the clubs and everything. We were sort of the ambassadors, because we were known as people could stay up late and party and take out the visiting firemen. He was gone more and more, and there began a discontent there that was to continue. And so my dad had had grain elevators. And he mentioned one time that my brother, who was just younger than me, had been killed in a grain accident where the walls of the elevator had collapsed, and he was suffocated, and there were just the 2 little boys. So it just sort of started off jokingly, about needing Jack to help him. And I never was just real gung-ho on family businesses, because I think they can get really kind of messy sometimes, and the drinking part, and for us to move to Lubbock. So I wrote this long letter explaining I'm really good at explaining things. I just overshare on just about everything. And so I wrote out this letter saying that we did drink and that I didn't want to have to, be so careful to run behind the bottle when they came over. And this was sort of, drinking wasn't done in my house. So anyway, we moved to Lubbock, and the cardinal rule for the drinking for Jack had been to start at 5 o'clock. He had an 8 to 5 job, and he would not drink until 5 o'clock, or if he did, he wouldn't go to work. But mostly he would wait until the secretaries had left and then open the bottom drawer of his desk and get out the bottle. Well, in the grain business, it's so seasonal that, the 5 o'clock rule got bent, and he had a green and white ranchero. I thought he looked so neat. He wasn't wearing a suit anymore. He was wearing khakis. He always had a flat stomach, and I just thought he looked so neat. He had a telephone in his truck at that time, and that was pretty unusual. The only thing about it, he never did answer it. I couldn't keep up with him. And before, he'd stayed put at his office, and now he was no telling where. But in the off seasons, there was a lot of gin rummy and playing, and we were still drinking together. He'd come by and get the bottle, and he was so considerate of me. He would always make me the first drink and make it very strong, because you can't, if you can't get them to join you, they're not going to be quite so gripey. I've been around a lot of women that come into Al-Anon, and I'll tell you for sure, I can understand why their husbands drink. There's just no doubt in my mind that they had a good reason. And so he was going to eliminate that part of our reason. He'd just get me going first. And but he drank just about a fifth. Well, I helped, but when he'd get down, he never did buy a lot. He'd just buy kind of a fifth at a time. And so when he'd get down kind of low, he'd always say, I better go to the liquor store before it closes, because you're probably going to want another drink. So he's very thoughtful and took good care of me. But then there came a time when I wasn't keeping up anymore, and he was just getting too far ahead of me, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And one day, our youngest, we'd had a little boy in Houston, and a lot of our things about our life changed with this. We started doing more family things. We had Santa Claus again, and we started. He brought a lot of joy in our life, and bless his heart, he's been a teacher. He's the one I call my spiritual sandpaper, and he's kept me honest and aggravated, and probably can make me madder in 3 seconds, not even trying, that most people can, working real hard at it. But anyway, he came in one day, and he'd gone out in the pickup, and he'd brought in, his little arms were full of little half-pint bottles of vodka. And so then I began to understand why I wasn't keeping up. Jack would go and get a fifth, and then the vodka, and drink the vodka, because I wasn't stupid, so that he'd know, and he'd just have a little bit out of the bottle drunk. And so I think the first thing that hurt so bad was the lack of trust, because I had been his drinking buddy. He had never hidden drinking from me, because you can't hide something from somebody that's with you all the time. I almost smothered their marriage with its togetherness. And but anyway, I know my heart just sank, because it was a whole different thing, and we talked about it periodically. Jack's dad was one of those 3 men in this little town that was the town drunk. And he was a neat man. He could quote Socrates, Plato, and all those things, and his English was horrible, and everybody had a nickname. And Jack's name, well, he just loved this, but he's not here to defend himself, but Jack's real name was Crockett David. He said, if you'd been called Croc in the Army, you'd drink too. But his dad started calling him Smart Aleck Jackson, and then got down to Jackson, and then Jack. So it's a complete. But he named everything. Named his tractors, named his chickens, and I was Patser, and he always would tell me, he said, Patser, you're my favorite daughter, because you gave me the grands, and we had those 3 then. And when Jack was in Korea, well, he was the father's substitute, and he ran a thrasher. I'm really going round and about today, so he ran an old thrashing machine, and he'd come by and get our little boy was about 3 then. And when I saw where he was taking him, I nearly died. He could have been killed 14 times before lunch at that thing. But he was a neat, gentle man. And we had seen a change in their life because he was one of the town drunks and had been a source of shame and embarrassment to Jack and his brother and his mother. And I had never seen Jack cry until one Christmas. They were supposed to come up and somebody came by and gave his dad a drink. And I saw Jack cry because Christmas was just, not going to be good. But he had found AA, and their life had changed so much. And we went to meetings. We went to meetings in this would be like 1948 or so, when Bill Wilson came to Lubbock. And the old time, I have some literature from then when it's called the Lubbock County Alcoholics Anonymous Auxiliary. And to see the change, because the arguing in their house, it was always just made me feel really bad. And I've heard it said that the sounds in an alcoholic home, the harshness of the voices and the hurtful things that are said, and the change that had come about, and they still argued. They could just argue. It didn't matter which side. Just choose a side and I'll take the other one. They just liked that. But it was a different kind of, it had a whole warm tone about it. And this is one of the first things I found out about me, is that sarcasm was one of my weapons. And to try to disguise it, with to sheathe the stiletto with the white velvet just before you stick it in, And one of the pages in our outline talks about sarcasm literally means the tearing of the flesh. And I was really good at this. But I'd listen to myself when I'd be yelling at my kids and the phone would ring. And your voice just changes when you pick up the phone. You're not going to continue this horrible talking. And so I listen now to my voice. And when I really feel like I'm okay, I sound like chocolate fudge tastes to me. And when I'm not, it's like peanut brittle. It's sharp and crackly. And so this is what I heard in their house. So the differences in the way they talk to each other, the tone, the whole tone. And we went to meetings with them. They had potluck suppers, and we'd go to those. And his mom always took this same macaroni dish. You get traditions. You start them early, like we go at conferences, you do something one time and you started a tradition. You got to do it this way. So she always took the same dish, and we went and thoroughly enjoyed it. I remember the cleanness that I felt inside. And we were so thrilled that his dad had found this, in his mom, this serene feeling that we would go out and get drunk together to celebrate. That was really wonderful for them and for those folks that needed it. And then the time was to come when we became those folks, and we were still, 5 people living in a house with very separate compartments. And like I said, I wasn't able to keep up. Now the drinking wasn't fun. I was still seeing it as fun. And even after we came in the program, I wasn't real sure I wanted Jack to quit drinking completely. I just wanted it to be back the way it used to be, the way I remembered it used to be. I don't think it ever was the way it used to be, but the way that I remembered it. Because those of you that know Jack know he was a quiet person. He didn't talk a whole lot. So he had a partner one time, and they said 30 minutes of animated conversation between Jack and Forrest is 30 minutes of complete silence. And so I thought, we won't ever talk again, and we sure probably won't ever have sex again if he quits drinking, because he was so inside and I was such an outside person. And here's so much about communication, and I thought we were communicating. I did. I just found out that I talked a lot, and he acted like he was listening. So we had a lot of learning to do about communication, and we learned a lot of it going to meetings. And there was a little 12-step house is what it's called, and Bill Farley. And Bill Farley should have been dead any number of times. One day I went in, our youngest son, he went with us, and I'm sure a lot of people disliked that. But anyway, I went in and he had one of those Quaker oatmeal boxes, the little round things, and he had his foot in it. He was walking around with that oatmeal box on his foot. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm playing like Bill Farley." Well, Bill Farley had been on the railroad track and had gotten the front part of his foot cut off, and he had to wear special kind of boots. So this brings up a teaching point. You never know when you're going to be watched, so set a good example if you can. But we went down there, and the things that I learned and the feelings that I felt and the love for these people, and the one time we'd gone down there and had just been swept away by it. Everything was a miracle then, and we did talk. Our communication then was about the miracles and how exciting it was to, so we'd heard this man talk one Sunday night, and just had touched us both so deeply, and then found out he left the meeting and went out and got drunk. And that's just a very hurtful thing, because I think my feeling was you walk into AA or to Al-Anon, and it's just like, sort of like the pearly gates of heaven. I didn't know that people had affairs after they came into the program. I didn't know that they didn't always tell the truth, and it was a surprise to find out that he could make this talk and then go out and get drunk. And I remember how he shook Jack up, and he called Bill Farley, and Bill told him, he said, "Jack, it's not the miracle, or it's not the idea of him going out and get drunk. The miracle is when somebody comes in and stays sober. And the norm would be to go out and get drunk." And one time, I don't think anybody ever told us we had a choice then, and you didn't have a choice of 90 meetings in 90 days either, because there were not 90 meetings in 90 days. There was like a Saturday night meeting and a Wednesday night meeting, and Jack and Johnny Brooks started a Monday night big book study. But we had decided we'd go to a basketball game, and Bill called Jack and asked him if he'd hold a meeting, and Jack said, "Bill, I'd like to, but we're going to a basketball game tonight." And Bill said, "Jack, how many basketball games got you sober?" And Jack says, "We'll be there." So he's still saying "we" because I was with him. And this is something else. The smothering that I did was to learn. It's not an accident that in our Al-Anon literature and books that detachment has more readings than anything else. And it doesn't mean that you get away from the person. It doesn't mean you stop loving it. It just means you start finding out that you are individual, and that you give each other the freedom. The thing about the butterfly or the bird or whatever it is, that if you hold it on your open palm, and if it flies away, if it comes back, it's yours, and if it doesn't, it never was. But Ramona, some of you remember Ramona, would talk about going to her grandmother's farm, and the little chicken that she'd pick up, and she was holding it too tight. And she said, "You've got to have an open hand." And why this is making me cry. I had to learn to love without just squinching on so tight, because if it goes away and doesn't come back, it never was yours anyway. Well, this is mighty interesting. I never know. Mine is so interesting to me. When Jack died, well, I could tell you about it. I could just talk to you and tell you things and be just real dry-eyed. And I'd go to the grocery store and the clerk would say, "Do you want paper or plastic?" And I just burst into tears. There just isn't any rhyme or reason, so I never do quite know. They just come bubbling out, and whatever. I've got to find a Kleenex. Hang on. Here's one. Let's see, I was talking about chickens and tears. left Lubbock. Let's see, how did we get to Austin? Oh, I know, I remember. A Lubbock guy was governor. And so one of the guys in the program, there was a department that never had been taken care of. I hope my watch is right. And anyway, they asked Jack to be the, can't even remember his title now, it was really important. And in the insurance department. So we moved to Austin. And I just loved Austin. And I really felt like, it was God-directed, except Jack was gone about every weekend for about the first 3 months. And I got to wondering if God just meant for me to move down there. And but anyway, Austin, of course, it's like all of you have experienced when you've been in a program. We were in the program for 9 years in Lubbock, and it felt warm and safe, and we knew everybody. And they had a party every third month. Just let somebody have 3 days sobriety and somebody'd have a party for them. And moved to Austin. We couldn't get a phone, didn't know anybody. I knew one person. And what saved me was somebody said, oh, you need to meet Doris. Doris had worked in the alcoholic ward of the state hospital, because this was before treatment centers and everything. So she asked me if I'd like to be a volunteer. And I went 1 hour a week, and then I started going 1 day a week, and then I started going every day until noon. And I just loved it. I loved being around the alcoholics. They had to go through the hospital part and to be detoxified and everything, and be whatever you call it. They had to come in and sit down with the psychiatrist and the doctors and the counselors, and they'd ask them, do you know what day of the week it is? Who's your senator? And I thought, I hope they don't ask me. I don't even know today. But they'd let me sit in there, and this is just such a neat time for me. And she said a lot of times Al-Anons know more or a lot about alcoholism, but the alcoholics don't. I think that's true because we remember it all. But anyway, we started in Austin. And they didn't do it right. They didn't do it like they did in Lubbock. But I've been there now, 30 years, and it's still, there are times, I'd change it quite a bit. And, I mean, I've lost the baby. I don't know where, we went to a lot of conferences. I know, I remember Austin. Yeah, I'm through with that. Sharon, I'm going to have to stir it up. You're going to have to figure things down. We went to a lot of conferences, and so anyway, this was a part of our life. AA and Al-Anon was our life. We did all these things. And I just always I'd gotten a sponsor after a while. When the pain got greater than the pride, well, I did ask for a sponsor. My sponsor was married to the person that Jack asked to be his sponsor. And I just really had an aversion against, because I had drunk with Jack, and I liked it, and I like alcoholic women. And like I said, I've seen some Al-Anons that I can see why their husbands drink, and some of them were just so good, they just about made me sick. And I just never could. She said, I don't like to be called sweet, and I just don't like sweet women. And so some of them, I was so determined that goody-good women just would really turn me off. So I just thought, I don't want to be like that. So I'd sling out a 4-letter word every now and then. So you wouldn't get the impression that I was too good. So we went to Cedar Glen one year, and I just had this sort of a spiritual explosion down there. And I went crying all weekend, and things had just been opened up. And so I talked to Octavia, who was my sponsor, and I said, Octavia, I'm just really worried that I'm just, this has happened to me, and that I'm just going to get too good. And she said, Pat, you got a lot of things to worry about, but getting too good ain't one of them. So I don't have this trouble today, But I can't imagine what my life would be like if I didn't have people like you are here this weekend that have loved me and you've hugged me. When Jack found out he had lung cancer, and we had another road to walk, a lot of you in this room walked it with me and came and gave me comfort. And it was about the time that the O.J. Simpson trial. I remember Benoit had flown in, and we were sitting in the kitchen. Here came a bunch from Norman, some ungodly hour of the morning, and still talking about O.J. And part of them didn't think he was guilty at all. But anyway, you went with me, and you stayed with me, and you sent flowers and cards. And I remember the day that we went in, and the doctor had told Jack that there was just a short time left to live. And you had taught us so well about living one day at a time that we could do it. We could just do today. So when we left, he said, what do you want to do? And I said, Jack, I don't know. I never have done this before. And one of Page and our Al-Anon book says, this woman was brought bad news by her priest or whatever. And her mother had told her, you do whatever it is that you'd be doing if this hadn't happened. And I said, well, I have coupons, 2 for 1 to go to Red Lobster. And he said, let's go. So we went, and that's the way we were able to do it, was just that those little days at a time. And he had helped start a group over at Mama's Kitchen. This was the last thing he wanted to give up, and I took him. I was still going with him, but it wasn't with such a tight rein now. And I love going to AA meetings. I always try to, help them out all I can. They don't pay any more attention to me than Jack did, but so we'd go to Mama's Kitchen, and sometimes we'd have to leave early. But hospice came, and there were still meetings. People came to the house, and they gave me the gift of rest. They would say, somebody'd stay at night. And I'd hear just subdued noises because my bedroom door was closed. I could be to the bed in 4 seconds, but I'd smell bacon frying at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and somebody was there. And finally, one of the things that, if any of you heard Jack talk about surrender and pride, finally the time came when I said, Jack, it's really time for you to surrender. And I did not fall apart. You had taught me how to be whole, how to know that after being married for 48 years, I was going to miss him, but I wasn't going to die without him. You had taught me how to live a life, and that we weren't hooked together with our umbilical cords. And one woman asked me, I had a wreck not long ago and totaled my car and had to go buy a new one. And this one woman, she said, well, I've got to get a car and I'm going to talk to Cecil about it. Well, Cecil's been dead for several years. She asked me, she said, do you talk to Jack about things like that? And I thought, Lord, no, if her voice came out, I'd still be running. But we had enough togetherness that I still remembered the special things. And I said the other night that one of the 4-letter words in our house was pride. And Jack talked about pride a lot. And about that he felt like it was at the base of every character defect there is, even fear. We never did completely agree about that. But I had gone to conferences. I'd gone to women's conferences, and I had learned that I was going to miss him. There wasn't going to be a day I didn't, but I wasn't just going to curl up and die. And that the need for Al-Anon was still just very great for me, because I have 8 grandchildren. One of them's in prison. And one of them's just come back from Kuwait as captain in the Marines. And he's tall and handsome. And the statistics are going to show that if all 8 of them get by unscathed by the disease of alcoholism, that'll be pretty rare. Right now I don't see any. I don't know that there are symptoms, but I'm not around them This is one way I think God keeps me humble and working the program, is that he doesn't let them be too close to me. The one that's my spiritual sandpaper lives in Austin, and all of a sudden he's acts like my mother now. He's worried that I'm not eating properly, and but anyway, when this is sort of an aside, but anyway, we took Jack's ashes out to where we lived, and it was after Christmas. We waited till then, and it was just dreary and cold. It was not a good experience. It wasn't one of those chill, bumpy, neat times. It was bad. And so when we got back, everybody was exhausted. Our daughter couldn't land because the weather was so bad and everything. When we got back to Austin, Kyle looked at me and he said, "Mom, when you die, do you mind if we just FedEx you?" And I'm with him, that's fine. But today, just a short time, my family's going to be getting together to celebrate my mother's 99th birthday. And she's the neatest lady. She just dresses up, and she still takes care of all of her business stuff, and she's just a neat person. And when I'm asked, who are your role models, I have a bunch. A bunch of them are sitting here in this room that I watch you. I've told this story so many times, but I went to the first women's conference. I don't know whether this is to be told in front of guys or not. Anyway, I was rooming with Benoit, and so anyway, we watch each other put on makeup and do these things, And so she put on pantyhose without panties, and I hadn't been doing that, And so I thought, well, that makes sense, because why are they called pantyhose? And so, and I said, I never would have learned that. Jack Clater never could have taught me that. And I thank God for that. But anyway, there's a lot of people that come on my side of the fence that have they've tried to let men teach them how to be women. And they can't do it because they don't know how. So women teach women how to be women. And we've learned to be more feminine, and that you don't have to be tough to be gentle. And this is one of the things that you've taught me, that I like being a girl. I like having you open the door for me. And when a guy opens the door for me, I say, "Oh, I appreciate a gentleman." And you know what he always says? He always says, "My mama just shoot me if she saw me walking in front of you." And I think, yay, mothers do have a purpose. I just love the name of your the theme of your whatever it is. It's about purposes. Purpose. What is it? We'll be happy and joyous and have a purpose. I'm about ready to wind down. I think I'm just beginning to talk, but this is just one more thing that I talked about. I just got so sick of people telling me to look at my motive. I just got sick of the word motive. I have to have a word to fit in, and I never could fit in motive. It just didn't work. But purpose does. When you say, what was the purpose of your doing that? I can use purpose, and I'm not trying to rewrite the program, but to have a purpose. And I guess that's why I keep coming back, and why I need to come back is because I do have a purpose. I have a woman crazier than a bed bug calling me and telling me that her 50-year-old son won't move out, and and I can tell her you need to go down on, and she said, well, they smoke, and I said, well, find another group, And I'm not too patient, but they've got to be very low maintenance these days for me to sponsor them. But this quick story, and I'll make it down about the two seas that are fed from the same water, and one of them you see, and it's just got kids playing and people having picnics and fish jumping and the butterflies abounding and everything. And here's this other one that's been fed by the same water over here, and it's sitting here stagnant and dull. There's nothing growing. There's nothing alive. There's no trees or grass around it. And the difference in the two seas, the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, is that the Sea of Galilee takes it in, and pushes it out, takes it in and gives it away. And the Dead Sea just takes it in and keeps it. And I get a picture sometimes, and let me tell you, I don't want to be a Dead Sea. So whatever you all are giving me, I'm going to give it right back, because I don't want to get stagnant. So that's the reason I still have a committed meeting, and that's the reason I still need to do the things that I need to do. Slowed down a lot, but anyway, whatever I'm doing, I do have a purpose, and one of my purposes today is to let you love me, and I thank you that you do.